Good morning. We are getting to, I guess, to the last stage of being able to have, say, all our grain is basically safely stored. The last one we were watching was this canola bin. This is 10,000 bushels of canola. When we took this off, the grain, or the temperature outside and the grain temperature was between 26 and 30 degrees. Like, it was hot. But the canola was dry. Now, by dry, I mean it was like 7, 8 moisture. Some of it was 6. So that's still 6, 7, 8% moisture. And when you stack it all up in a bin, no matter what size it is, you stack it all in there, it does start to sweat a little bit, especially at 30 degrees. When you get up to those temperatures, that's not normally something we don't deal with here in northern Alberta. But when you get it stacked in like that, it can start to, because the grain sweats a little bit, it will start to heat on its own again. So we don't have in-floor aeration, and this is, I've said this before in our bins, this is not the proper way to do this. However, I don't care what anybody says, it does work. It's the cheapest way to store grain. So we got 10,000 bushel bin. This aeration ducting runs right down to the center of the bin. And we use that, that's just an old piece of 7-inch auger tube. We stick that down in there so we can center unload the bin, hook our grain back up to the end of that. If we want to move some air through it, we hook this sock up, and then then we can blow air into it. So that's not a big fan. They want you to have basically 10 horsepower fan for this kind of bin. That's like 2, but it works. It moves air through there, and the way we know that it moves air through there is by our monitor here. And I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of like water runs down the outside of the bin. Now that happens when 28 degree air hits 0 degree air. That's just what happens, right? The condensation occurs, a little bit of water forms, and it runs out. Yet again, this isn't the proper way to do it. We don't have roof vents, we don't have all of that stuff, so we leave the top roof cap is open and we just let it go through. So how we know, 1 second, monkey. You got different shoes on. So if we go here now, you can see back here, these ones at the bottom. So the number 23 there, number 1, that's right on the floor of the bin. Then these 28s and 26s as you move up to the top, and then you get to the very top. Looks like there's 7 sensors in this bin. So the 28 wasn't that it was heating. The 28 was the temperature that we put it in the bin. And then it fluctuated. So this one that's 29, if you go to the next screen on this monitor, and if it says 21.6, it'll read 22 on the other screen. 24.5, it'll read 25. So these ones that are 28, 29, it could be like 28.4, and then the next day it was 28.5. So not an issue. But we plan to store this canola for a little bit longer than a week or two. Some guys haul it right off the farm. They don't want to store it. We find, obviously, the better prices come January, February. So as you can see, the air was clearly going through it. And we checked it quite a bit. So the bottom is days. So 2 days ago, I checked it 3 or 4 times. So the bottom sensor, that's right where right at the floor, went from 17 down to 12, went from 24 down to 12, from 29 down to 15, from 28 down to 22. You can see, and that shows the air is moving through the bin. Now, is it just channeling straight up? Probably. It's probably exactly what's happening. It's probably the air is blowing through that tube. Of course, that tube is perforated for quite a ways down. About 14 feet of that tube is, or sorry, not 14 feet. About 10 feet of that tube is perforated. So, I mean, it is moving a bit. But the natural airflow of grain this time of year is down the wall, up the middle. That's why you'll always get a hot spot in the core of your bin. So the other day, I took out a load, so the grain in there isn't even peaked up, it's coned down, and then I turned the fan on. Move all that moisture up, and out, hopefully, all that heat, all that moisture. What happens though, because we don't have the good roof vents and we don't have the air volume, is some of the condensation actually runs down and runs down the sidewall. So now what we got to do, we're going to take out about 2,500 bushels, because this is a 10,000 bushel bin, so roughly a quarter of what's in there. We're going to take that right out, pull it right down. We'll test it as we take it out, because all that heat and moisture had to go somewhere, so it could have like translocated into another spot on the bin. But we're going to take it right out. We're going to take it over to our 2,500 bushel bin that also has a cable, also has air, and then we're going to throw it in there. We do the same principle on a 2,500 bushel bin. You can just imagine it's a lot more efficient. When you go up to the roof cap on a 2,500 bushel bin with the fan going, it'll blow your hat off your head. When you go up to this one, you actually can't feel the air coming out unless you like half close the lid, then you can feel the air coming out. So that's a bit of a spiel on grain storage. As I said before, extremely high temperatures, which we consider like 28 to 30 degrees up here in northern Alberta, certainly in the fall or late in the summer, is extremely rare. And as you know, if you watch our videos, all our barley and stuff that we put in these 12,000 bushel bins, we actually put them in our 4,000 bushel bins first for a few days. Turned the fan on overnight, cooled it down from 28, 29, 30, 32 degrees. Some of that grain was 35 degrees. It was totally nuts. So we cooled it down to like 20 degrees, which is what we got to overnight. Let that blow for a few days, took it out, put it in there. We've plugged into all these bins several times. Every single bin actually has already started a downward trajectory, and that's a slow process for the grain to cool down from the outside air. But every bin is starting to go down a little bit, with the exception of this canola bin. It wasn't really going up, wasn't really going down, but we knew 28, 29 degree canola stored in a 10,000 bushel bin for months and months at a time. We'd rather do this stuff today before the snow flies and it gets down to minus 40. So that's what we're gonna do. The other thing I should point out, and it's only because I read an article that said, like, you know, other countries are watching, and every farmer's on YouTube now, so don't put on dumb stuff. So like those little streaks of water you can see, so that is from the heat in the grain bin going up, hitting the roof. The roof is very cold, turns to water, runs down the side. Does that mean this whole bin is wrecked? No, it's not. That's not at all. Like, look at the fender on this grain vat. Like, that's the morning dew. All of our bins, all the time, they'll have water running off them. It gets so hot during the day right now and so cold at night. That's why most Canadians really despise the weather in the fall. Because when you wake up, it's like, oh my God, where's my slippers? I need my big jacket on. You get dressed up, you got a t-shirt, you got a hoodie with the woolly inside, you got a big Carhartt jacket. You go outside, you're cold, you're miserable, and by about 11 o'clock to 12, 1 in the afternoon, it's so hot, you're stripped right down to shorts and sandals again. And so yeah, I mean, there is no issue. And the way we know there's no issue is by investing in those cables and I mean, having farmed for more than 1 year, so we understand the process, and this is just a process. Thankfully, we don't have 1,000 bins to do. We just got this one, and I shouldn't say thankfully. It'd be nice to have 1,000 bins to do. But I'm gonna get at it here. What we're gonna do, our little baby single axle here, we're gonna fill it right up, and that will be all of the grain from the very top of the bin, right? Bins unload from the top down, and then once I get this full, Corey can take it down, she can sample it. I expect it's gonna be 9, maybe 9.5, maybe even 10. Because all of the heat went up to the top, hit that cold air, turned into water, and either went out of the bin, dripped out, or stayed there. That's why you have to do this after you run the fan, because you gotta make sure that if anything stayed there, you get it out, or it'll heat around the edges. You'll just be, how do we know? Been down there, been down that road. it's been a few up down the ladders already, but what I'm really trying to do is see how much is stuck. So, as I said, these bins don't have those roof vents, which I wish that the grain bin manufacturers would just make that standard. Like you do need them, really on any bin, but when you get into the bigger ones, like I'd say 10,000 bushel and up, it shouldn't even be an option. Like you need that to be successful. So as you can see, it unloads from the center, and our plan is to bring that cone maybe 3 or 4 feet down the wall, the edge, because I know some of the moisture stayed in the bin. You can see the roof there too, and you don't want that. That'll make a ring around here, and if there's enough water, or I guess the more water there is on the roof, the thicker and the bigger that ring is, and then you know, it can potentially contaminate some of your load, and that's not what we want. We want to, this is all #1 canola, it's all nice and dry. The only problem was it was just the outside air temperature was just a little hot when we put it in the bin, so we don't want to lose it or have it downgraded because of laziness or something on our part. Something satisfying about watching canola flow. All the chaff rises above, you know, like the light stuff in an avalanche. It all rises up, and then it goes, and then it flows again, and it starts a new path. That blue line in there, that's our temperature cable. So I'm still critical of this grain vat for being a piece of junk, but once it's set or fixed or, you know, built a little stronger than it was from the factory, it does load fast. So that's pulling out of the center of a 24-foot bin, so 12 feet, plus the other pipe, 25 feet. Now this is only going to be about 500-600 bushels. This is a pretty big box for a single axle. But yeah, it'll load this in 4 or 5 minutes. So it's probably going to echo in here pretty good, but this is the old style, basically original aeration that they came up with. This is a 14-foot bin, very small, and it's what, 2,500 bushels. I don't even know how tall it is. So you put a 2-horse fan on this, like the one I had on that 10,000, blow air through this tube, and because the bin is so much smaller, it really rockets out of the roof. And if I hadn't showed anybody, this is the cable. So the lowest sensor would be down here somewhere. You just attach it to your floor, and it goes up to the roof. So we're gonna put 2,000 or so bushels in here. I might even fill it up, I don't know, we'll see how the day goes, of that other canola. And then you can imagine, right, a 10,000 bushel bin of canola at today's price is worth roughly $190,000. Just one of those grain bins of canola. So they're not all full of canola. I wish they were, but they're not. 190,000 for 10,000 bushels, right? It's about $19 a bushel right now. You put all that canola in one bin, no cable. You head to Phoenix, you head on your holiday, you come back, it's all spoiled. You can drop that value to either 0 or just anywhere below 19. You put it in bins like this, 2,500, 2,500, 2,500, 2,500. So you divide your 190,000 by 4. Your risk is a little lower. Of course, you don't want to lose any of it anyways, because what, 2,500 is still going to be $50,000. You don't want to lose that either. But it's, I don't know, it's just, it's a weird thing to say because the numbers are big, but you sleep better at night knowing that you have it in 4 separate bins, and there's cables, and the fans will do a better job if you need to use them. Even if you have a wreck, it's easier to move 2,500 bushels than it is 10,000. So that's our plan. It always is our plan. We like to use those big bins at harvest because you don't ever have to move the bin. 2 combines rolling on 35-foot swaths of, you know, 40, 45, 30, whatever the bushel of canola is. You can get 10,000 bushels a day easy. So if you never have to move the auger, it's just, you just keep pouring it in there. But as soon as we're done combining, then you got to use your monitors, check all the conditions, and adjust accordingly. All right, well, this is going to be the last video. As you can see, that's what we didn't want to leave. So some of the water didn't run outside of the bin, it ran down the wall inside. And if you leave that, you'll have big clumps of rotten or heated or moldy canola there, and they'll fall off and they'll go down into the load. Now if it's only a little bit, it's no big deal, but if it's a lot, it can contaminate the load and cause you to be downgraded. So once we blow on it for a week or so and get all the heat out, most of the moisture, you take 1,000, 2,000 bushels out depending on how big your bin is. Maybe you need to take 3 or 4 or 5 if you have 30, 40, 50,000 bushel bins. And then stick it in a different bin, and life should be good, knock on wood. So we'll keep checking these monitors, but this will probably be the last load I take out of here. I'm pretty happy with how it all looks.